Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
I haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen Emily. I don't know the last time I saw you. What, like lunch?
I don't know.
Dinner?
I don't know. I feel like I haven't been seen in years. I'm so depressed.
We haven't seen Garrett, though, in person. We haven't seen him in person in, like, what, a couple months?
Couple weeks.
I got his girlfriend the other day. That was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my
Close
Garrett.
enough.
Yeah.
Proxy.
It's like Garrett Light.
How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Yeah?
I'm ready to learn about some Tudors.
Good, because I got...
I vaguely remember what we were going to be talking about.
What do you remember?
Because the last episode we did was the pirate, not pirate. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of hinted to us talking about poor people.
Yeah. Okay,
Because,
but...
Yeah.
you know, the happiest subject we can talk about right now.
But before we get into that, I have a couple of things. I wrote notes because there are things to discuss. So first of all, I'm sure all of our listeners care very deeply about what I'm reading.
I think they actually do care.
I love you guys. So my brother recommended me a really amazing book, and I'm addicted to it. It's called At Home by Bill Bryson, and I'm listening to the audiobook of it, which is really good. Some audiobooks are really terrible. I have returned to the terrible ones, but At Home is really interesting. So the basic premise of the book is so first of all, this is in England, so they have rooms that we don't have here in the United States of America. But he's taking you room by room through a house and touching on historical elements of that house. So it's not just like this house was built in 1825 and it was established by blah blah blah. No, it's so one episode or one chapter I just finished was they were talking about the bathroom. So they were like, this is the bathroom, and they started talking about the history of cleanliness and toilets, and it was so freaking fascinating. So the book does that through every room. It'll be like, hey, we're gonna go through the exterior of the house, and it's going to talk about how the material used to build houses changed and under what instances. It was just incredibly fascinating, and I'm not finished with it yet, but you just learn a lot of little things. So it's called At Home by Bill Bryson. It doesn't cover specific time periods. It's just history in general. So our listeners might like that.
Neat.
Okay.
But it's not Tudor adjacent. It's just
No, but
history.
I mean, they did talk. So one episode they talked about was one chapter covers the bedroom, and that's where they got into clothing. And they discussed the sumptuary laws that we had talked about, how in Henry VIII's time there were laws established saying what you could wear. So there's Tudor stuff in it, but if you like history, it's just a really good one. So highly recommend At Home by Bill Bryson. Now, my brother also recommended another book of his. I cannot remember what it's called, but he told me to start with At Home. So if there's another Bill Bryson book you find, do that second. Thank you to my brother. All right. Next topics. TV shows and movies. I am devastated that Lady Jane was canceled. Like a week out, like 2 days later.
Like literally, like we had posted our episode, like the next day it was canceled.
That's
Like
so
you
sad.
cursed it.
I did not curse it. Hey, you killed Terry Garr.
Yeah.
This is all Jeff's fault. We were watching Young Frankenstein. Jeff made the callous remark of, oh, only Terry Garr and Mel Brooks are still alive. And then the next fucking morning, Terry Garr died. So
I can't believe you killed her.
I know.
did.
I'm sorry.
So I'm sorry that I got
RIP.
Lady Jane canceled.
to Miss Terry Garr. She was incredible. I love Young Frankenstein. I was very sad.
It was very sad.
But yeah, I was sad about the
Lady Jane.
Yeah, Lady Jane show. Because
That-
after you told us the ridiculousness of that show on the last episode.
See, the thing is, I know it's a book series and I know I could read the books to find out what happens. I don't want to read the books. As a book, that's never one I would pick up. But as a silly little fun show, it was delightful. So I'm just going to have to rewatch the first season again. The movie Firebrand. We talked about it in one of the recent ones.
Right.
That's one where Jude Law made himself a nasty perfume. Right?
Yeah.
I have not watched it yet, but my mom did. And she was raving about it.
Where is it?
It's on Amazon Prime. I think
Was it a Prime show or just something that's just
it's a
now
movie.
streaming on there?
It's a movie, and I think you have to pay to rent it right now.
Oh, okay.
My mom said it's amazing to the point where she rented it twice to watch, and she doesn't do that with movies.
Do you know who the main focus is?
Yeah, it's Catherine Parr.
Oh, okay.
And it's about the last years of Henry VIII's reign, and her avoiding being murdered.
Is there any other significant?
Jude Law and Alicia Vikander, who is one of my
Right.
favorite actresses.
I forgot
She's so
it was
good.
her being in the movie.
Yeah, so I gotta watch that. And then Wolf Hall, the next season of Wolf Hall is coming out. I never watched the entirety of the first season.
How long ago was that?
It was a while.
Because that's Mark Rylance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It was
Man.
well, so here's the thing though. Hilary Mantel wrote the books that the show is based on, and the third one only recently came out, and then Hilary Mantel died. It's very sad.
Oh.
R.I.P. But so the book only just came out like a year or two ago. Anyway, Firebrand, my mom said it was amazing. I just need to have a night where I either convince Jeff to watch it or get him the hell away from me so I can watch it. But good reports from my mom, and she and I have the exact same sense of humor and interest in the Tudor time. So basically it's a surefire plus from me. All right. I have a wacky plan, but I think our listeners are going to love it.
Whack away.
Ew. Take that back.
Is phrasing not a thing anymore?
All right, guys, I just need you all to gather together, scrounge through your couches, find all your quarters and your loonies and your yen and your francs and your
I want to see how far she can go with this.
Francs.
I really want to see how far your what's crap?
pounds /
What's the term they use for a buck? Like how we say it's like a buck. The one for the UK.
Oh, it's a
Quid.
a quid. Gather your quid. All we need is it's really not that much. 2.85 million, and we can buy Cardinal Wolsey's cottage. It's also beautiful. So, Cardinal Wolsey's cottage. It is up for sale. And
Colonel Wolsey's cottage
it
is
is
up for sale.
4,500 square feet. It is actually freaking beautiful. Obviously, it's been updated in the necessary spots, bathroom, but there's all of this beautiful inlay around the fireplace, and it looks, oh my God, I'm looking at pictures. It's so beautiful. So I think if we could all just collect, it's really not that much. 2.85 million. We could do that. Gather your loonies. I'm really assuming we have a lot of Canadian listeners.
It's our very large demographic we have, Canadians. I love Canadians, so I'm totally be happy.
Oh my God, this is beautiful.
Isn't it gorgeous?
It is so gorgeous.
Listeners will post pictures. It's stunning. It's my dream. It is my dream home. I want it. Yes, so let's just work on that. So collectively, and then we could all just hang out. We like everybody gets a weekend.
Oh, so it's like a timeshare.
Yeah, except not a ripoff. Look up Woolsey's Cottage, but we're also going to post it. It is absolutely stunning. So
Yeah, I'll upload to like Facebook, Instagram.
Woolsey lived there while Hampton Court was being built, and apparently he lived there with his mistress. So it's really beautiful. Just that's the one thing that I mean. There's a lot that we won't get into that. One thing I really, really wish that our country had. Okay, hold on. That's setting us up for failure. I wish I lived in a place where there was a lot of history. Not just like 200 measly sad years, but like a place where like you could stumble upon.
Brought that up on a recent episode
We've
about
talked
like
about it.
how the U.S. we're still relatively young compared to a lot of other countries.
Oh
yeah. Okay, so then listeners, I also need your opinions. Get Jeff Garrett, you guys too, but on next episode. And I have 4 topics. One I don't think is going to be very long. One is non-tutory, but still history. And then 2 are tutory. So the first is Bothwell, and he was one of the guys who married Mary Queen of Scots. And I don't know too much about him, so that would be a lot of fun for me. Both, as in bath, but Both. Well. Bothwell.
Sounds like a monster villain in like a video game.
Yes. Okay, the other Tudor topic would be Margaret of Burgundy, which I could have sworn we talked about, but when I looked at our history, I didn't see it. So, same time period, and she's got relations to the court, but she kind of has a tragic life. Okay, the other Tudory one, which we could talk about Tudor specific, but I found this post on Reddit where somebody was talking about an x-rayed portrait of Queen Elizabeth I. And I remember we talked about paintings, how they were regularly like painted over. Mm-hmm. Well, you can actually x-ray portraits and it would show you the underpainting. So there's a painting of Elizabeth I that a lot of people believe was painted over top a painting of Anne Boleyn. So I was thinking...
Has a term like pentamental?
I don't know.
The fortunate reason I know that is because of Futurama.
I love you. I'm so happy you're my husband. All right, we'll do a pentamental portrait episode.
There you go.
Okay. The other topic that I thought might be interesting, and this is a little bit just because I really want to dive into it, the English Civil War. Like, let's just get into beheaded kings. After all the Henry VIII shit, they have it coming. So, Jeff and Garrett, do you guys have a preference? And listeners, do you guys have a preference? Let us know in the comments.
We're waiting.
I like the idea of Civil War.
I think it'd be fun.
I'm curious. It's been a while
I'm
since we talked about
excited for it.
I think it'd be fun. All right. You guys ready?
Yeah, what the hell are we talking about, Emily?
Poor people.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
This is actually super fascinating. So, another thing I've learned about in the that book At Home is, and I don't even remember what quote unquote room the author was talking about that led to this, but he talks a lot about how horrific things were in Victorian England. And there was very little social support at that time for people who just were down on their luck or were returning soldiers or anything like that. But it wasn't non-existent. And really, I mean, poor people are not generally treated well in general. There's a lot more social support these days, but Victorian times were just like... Not Charles Darwin. Fucking Christ, why is Dickens? Charles Dickens.
Charles Darwin presents A Christmas Carol.
Charles Dickens, he really held the right of it with how horribly the poor were treated. In Victorian England, again, that's covered in At Home. It was such a good book. But I learned there was actually some social support that we saw in the Tudor times. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think we could all use a little bit of happiness, right?
Yeah.
Nothing makes me feel better than other people's misery.
Yeah. Okay. Beggars and Vagabonds by Elton John. All right. Apparently, okay, so I wrote this a long time ago, guys, like last time we were recording. So I don't know half of what my jokes to myself were, but I called it the hippies of the 16th century. So beggars and vagabonds apparently refused to work as husbandmen. And that is a real term, and it's where the current term husband comes from. Husbandmen were farmers. So anybody who refused to work as a husbandman or artisan, they would roam and beg. Those were the vagabonds. So a lot of vagabonds were actually soldiers or sailors who were returned, or who returned from war or were discharged, whatever. Not much has changed. But Henry VII did get Parliament to pass a law that prohibited noblemen. Wait, why did I write this? Oh, okay. All right, now I know. I wrote, Henry VII got Parliament to pass a law prohibiting noblemen from having more than a certain number of retainers. Okay, so back in let's go back to Richard III. Back in Richard III's time, noblemen would have their own, basically private armies. They'd have retainers that they could recruit and say, hey, we're going to go fight. And the theory was supposed to be like a hierarchy. Mm-hmm. The king was obeyed by the noblemen were obeyed by the people who worked their land and their retainers. Well, that led to the war. That was a huge contributing factor to the Wars of the Roses, because it was just a bunch of noblemen who had their own retainers. And they're like, I don't like that fucking duke, and I want to be king, so retainers go. So Henry VII, when he won the Battle of Bosworth, he realized really probably not a good idea to have a bunch of men in power with their own private armies. So he got it banned. It was illegal. And so all of those men who previously would have been paid and not had to beg, they were out. There was just like a massive increase in the number of vagabonds and beggars.
Jobless.
Yes. And then Henry VIII came along, and he just, of course, made things worse. Okay. So in the Tudor...
I just love the term vagabond.
It's such a good phrase.
It's romantic as hell.
I had no clue what it actually was for many, many years.
I mean, my first introduction to it was, Can You Feel the Love Tonight? So thank you, Elton John, for giving third grade Emily...
Yeah, as a kid, I remember singing that song, but I never ever thought to actually look up what it meant.
Same. But now I want to know All right, well, there's a Swedish brand named Vagabond. I want to know
A vagabond is a person who wanders from place to place without a fixed home.
Well, I know, but I want to know the history of the word, because, like, I'm sorry, I won't stop talking about this book.
It's a nomad. There's
also a manga called Vagabond. I want to know about the history of the word, because, like, there's a lot of modern terms we use that are based off of, it's basically like the LOL of old times, right? Which, by the way, fun fact, OMG has existed for hundreds of years to stand for oh my god. Look it up.
Hundreds of years. Could you imagine?
Yes.
Could you imagine?
OMG.
Okay, so Catherine Howard literally could have been like, OMG, Henry. All right. Sorry, Catherine Howard. You were probably not that bad. All right. So in the Tudor times were ruled by three ideas. 1, law-abiding people should give alms to help the elderly and the poor and those unable to earn a living. So the blind, the crippled, etc., etc. 2, those who could work but chose to live as beggars or vagabonds should be punished. And 3, all beggars needed to stick to their own parishes. So parish is like, I think like a county.
So you're aware the entire time we're going to be talking about this, in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking about that character from Wonka, the newest one with Timothée Chalamet. Every time someone says the word, he says the word poor, he starts gagging.
It's like the most unexpected joke. And I love it. Oh, that's why I did that. Okay. I literally wrote that down as a reference. I'm like, Wonka poor gag.
That's a whole different thing.
That's the rule of 34.
That was Grandpa.
Okay. So, all right. Giving help to the poor was basically a Catholic duty. And remember, everybody was ruled by their Catholicism, right? So it was practiced in monasteries where a lot of people just basically lived permanently as poor people. So that's why when Henry VIII shut down the monasteries, it was a huge problem because he just got rid of a huge social support. That'd be like a president just being like, you know what? No more, what are they called? Not homeless shelters. That's a terrible phrase for it. Something shelters. No more shelters. Keep that in. Make sure everybody knows I know what I'm talking about. All right. So in 1381, there was a peasants' revolt, and rebels demanded that there should be a reduction of taxes, an end to serfdom. Do you guys know much about serfdom?
Like on the waves?
Not those.
Damn it.
More like...
A serf is like an indentured servant, right?
It is.
Or like somebody that, they're like... fuck.
So it's like this terrible...
I don't want to sound dumb when I say it.
It's okay. Say it, and then we'll look it up later. Dumb is not being willing to educate yourself, Garrett, and you're willing to educate yourself.
Serfs work the fields, right?
I believe so. And they basically worked for their room and board. Like, there was nothing but work for them.
An agricultural laborer bound under the feudal system to work on their lord's estate. Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
You were. Good job. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
pat on the back for me.
Hell yeah. So, and that's why he's on the dean's list. All right.
Oh, stop.
No, I'm proud of you. All right. So, in 1381, the Peasants' Revolt, they demanded an end to serfdom and the removal of Richard II's senior officials in law courts. The rebels actually sacked the Tower of London, so they got pretty fucking far in this. And the royal officials were like, you know what? These are all very valid concerns. We will absolutely listen to them. I'm just kidding. They executed all of them. 1,500 rebels were killed, and the rebellion was suppressed. So nothing really changed.
Good effort, though.
And then, because of that, judges were allowed to treat vagabonds... This is a quote, "To them best shall some by the law." Meaning, sometimes you could give them the death penalty. Now, Henry VII, so 100 years later, Henry VII, in 1495, he repealed that act of Richard II. That was the 1383 Act. So, vagabonds, idle and suppressed persons, shall be put in stocks for 3 days and 3 nights. You guys know what stocks are, right?
Like an inn?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Stock? Like an...
Like the wood with the hole for
like
the head and the hands.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm free.
Yeah,
Dang it.
yeah, that guy. They
Stockade.
Yes.
I believe.
Man, I'm just
So
getting
they
more
could be.
Futurama jokes in my mind.
I know.
There's like the judge. He's like all the hospitals are all full of emergency being poor and mental illness.
Yep.
That's basically how this all sounds like right now.
So if you were in the stocks, you could only be fed and water, and anybody caught giving them something else was fined. Upon release, the vagabond had to return to the parish of their birth. If they didn't, they were put in the stocks again for 6 days and nights. And the old and impotent could beg only in their parish, and if they were outside of their parish, they were subjected to the same punishment. So if there was an old man from the neighboring parish and he came to your parish and asked for a coin, they'd be like, to the stocks. All right.
I always think, whenever I think of like medieval beggars, my brain always goes to Robin Hood when he's the old blind beggar, the Disney Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Which one? The fox one?
Shaking that
Yeah.
cup. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so
Think about him a lot.
things changed based on like if you had a background in anything. So if you were a university scholar, soldier, or sailor, and you were begging or vagabonding, then you could get a certificate from your chancellor of the university or commanding officer allowing you to beg around the country.
It's like a gold star. It's like a little sticker. It's like, see,
Good job.
I can beg here.
Okay, and then in 1504,
I just think they would do like, I'm going to put more effort just so I can beg at different places rather than
yeah.
put effort into to get a job.
So here's something that's really interesting. In the Victorian times, when I was talking about that book earlier, the focus on the poor, the concept about there's like a connection between the poor and like basically they were required to be there. Like you're poor because you should be. It's your place in life, and you shouldn't strive to be better. And if you try to be better than that, then you're going way above what is appropriate. So a lot of the wealthy thought it was basically their duty to keep the poor, which glad to know nothing has changed. But
I mean, how could one like pull themselves out of being poor? Like, if it was even possible. Like,
so
you can't just go to Yield McDonald's and get a fucking job. Like,
so that's why America became the country of opportunity. It's because you could just go there and and get
a job.
So the Vanderbilts, the wealth of the Vanderbilts is equivalent to like Bill Gates today. They had so much money. They had so much money that during their time, this was not them, but one of their equally wealthy neighbors had a formal dinner where they turned a restaurant into a barn, and the rich people sat on horses to eat their meal simply so that they could say they ate a formal dinner while sitting on a horse.
They're on their high horse.
Ah. So.
That was a good horse impression.
Thank you. So, the thing about the Vanderbilts, though, is they made their money by building railways. They made the lines that allowed things to be transported. I mean, they were ruthless businessmen. Commodore Vanderbilt, who is not a Commodore, he just liked being called that. Who, by the way, is Anderson Cooper's like great-great-grandfather.
I knew that.
Good for you.
Yeah. I mean, I knew that. It wasn't like, hey, Garrett,
Right.
who was Anderson Cooper's great-great-great-grandfather?
Right.
But
It was one of
I'm
those
like,
things.
oh, yeah, I already knew
Yeah.
that.
So in America, when people moved to America, it really was to find the opportunity to make wealth. And it was a lot more, I think, America's willingness to allow somebody to build themselves up as opposed to England, where it was like, no, this is where you are in your
Like,
life. and
once you're
gonna-
born in this is where you're at
Exactly.
for life.
So in England, there was not a way to pull yourself up from your bootstraps. There was one guy, I think he became a very famous architect in the 1800s. He actually started out as like a chimney, like one of those like 6-year-old chimney boys who would climb up chimneys to clean them. And one day he was drawing a picture in the street with charcoal, and a duke saw it, and he was like, "This is amazing. Come with me." And it was like a Cinderella thing, but that's like one story, right? So, maybe that happened a handful of times, but that's, I think, why America became such a land. I mean, we're called the land of opportunity. It's because there really was that. They didn't have that in England, based on my research and what I've been reading. So, yeah. No, Garrett, you're totally right. There's not a way for them to pull themselves up. So all of these laws, they're really just ways to keep the unwashed masses away from the wealthy and to punish them further for it. So it's horrible, but, you know, wealthy. Okay. So they were in the stocks for 3 days or 6 days, or unless they had that gold star. Now, in 1504, the punishment was changed to 1 night for the first offense and 3 nights for the second offense. So they lightened things up. And then in 1530, Henry VIII actually required that there be a list of beggars. And only those on the list would be given a license to beg in their parish. So if anybody else was found begging or roaming the countryside without evidence of lawful living, they were taken to the nearest market town, tied to a cart naked, and whipped until they were bloody. And that's where I wrote Wonka poor gag.
Oh.
I'm just thinking of James Bond, License to Kill, but...
License to beg.
License to beg.
So sad.
You have to go to like the formal like to go like a DMV.
That's what I was thinking of. It's so bureaucratic, and it's really just another way to fuck people over.
Hey, you got a license to ask for that money?
Right. So, okay. They were whipped until they were bloody, and then they were sent home. But if they didn't take, this is the nuts.
Sent home?
This is the...
How insensitive there, Emily.
They were sent back to their home parish. All right, this is fucking insane. If they didn't take the shortest path, they were whipped again. Like
this is so you told us on the last episode. I just couldn't believe. It's like that idea of asking the person, like, "What's the shortest distance between 2 points?"
I failed math. I don't know.
Why do you think I'm poor?
You beat me so bad I can't see straight. Yeah, so the shortest path home. If you helped a vagabond, you were fined.
You have to keep going straight. Like, nope, you gotta go over that rock. You're not going around it.
It's not the shortest path. Okay, there were additional punishments in the act to unauthorized persons traveling and acting as. Okay, so if you were not licensed to do one of these things, hold on.
Also, think about you have to go back for renewal. Like,
did
you beg today? Season. Yes. Did you beg last week?
Yes.
You tried begging.
Yes. All right. So there were additional punishments in the act to anybody who is unauthorized to travel and act as solicitors, physicians, pardoners, palm readers. This is my favorite. Players of unlawful games and actors of unlawful plays. Equius. Somebody was doing Equius and they're like, no! Get that horse away from him! What?
Sorry, other thoughts are going to my head with that one. Kinky Kelly. But I'm just like, so the games, things like those, like you see on the typical cartoons, like, oh, find the ball.
Yeah, you remember? I think we talked about this in our one of our games, in our games episode. There were certain games that were not allowed to be played, like certain card games. So if you, I don't know, were carrying a deck of cards or something, then they'd be like, to the stocks. So the punishment for that was they were whipped 2 days in a row for the first offense. For the second offense, they were whipped for 2 days again. And then for the third attempt, they were put in the pillory for 2 hours and lost an ear. Garrett, would you please look up the difference between a pillory and a stock?
So it looks like a pillory and a stock or pillory versus stockade. I don't know if there's a difference.
Okay, well then we're going with both.
Correct us if we're wrong, listeners, but
That's okay. All right, so put in a pillory for 2 hours, and their ear was lopped off. And
Jesus.
oh no! Sorry. I mean, yes, that's the punishment. All right. For the first offense, they were whipped 2 days in a row. For the second offense, they were whipped 2 days in a row, and then on the third day, they were put in the pillory for 2 hours and lost an ear. Then for the third offense, they were whipped twice and lost the other ear.
what's with taking the ear?
Yeah, that's such
Oh.
a. Lend me your ears.
That's just...
like
I know.
Like you said, whip for 2 days in a row, 2 days in a row, and then you said 2 hours in the stockade. I was like, oh, that's not so bad. And then
rip
lost
off
an
that
ear.
ear.
Why don't go for fingers? It's just like you're
Like
got 10
how
of them.
long?
I don't know. I think I'd rather lose an ear than a finger.
It's easier to hide your missing finger.
Yeah, but I don't really care about
long?
hiding an ear if I'm poor and need to fucking eat. Like, I feel like an ear would be less painful than losing a finger. The finger has bones. All right, listeners, would you guys rather lose an ear or a
Poll.
finger?
We're gonna pull a poll. Finger or ear
Or something else?
or another appendage. I mean,
If you
Dealer's
lose an ear,
choice.
you lose your equilibrium, don't you?
Only if you lose your hearing tube, your tubes in like
Yeah.
the ear shell doesn't do anything other than funnel volume in. Like it just helps you capture more noises.
That's why the ears are so big, because they help like weigh your head.
King Charles
properly.
III can hear us from his throne right now.
oh, he's livid at this moment.
Princess Diana deserved better than you.
Oh, I was going to lose a finger.
So, okay, listeners, what appendage would you rather lose if you were in the pillory? Ears, fingers, knees or toes? Knees or toes? Okay.
Man, I'm really thinking about it.
I just would rather lose an ear. Like, that's just a cosmetic thing, but fingers are function.
Take a pinky.
I mean,
I
use the
like
others.
my pinky.
what does a pinky do?
It's good for scratching small spots.
Like my
And-
ear.
My son can hold my pinky. And you can't pinky promise if you lose a pinky.
Exactly. I can break all sorts of promises from that point on.
You still got another pinky.
I know. Yeah, unless I do it, unless I beg again, then they take the other pinky.
Well, stop begging, Emily.
God.
I think there was one guy who was like, I already lost an ear and I actually really like listening. Like, you know, my wife complains about my hearing enough. Could you maybe take something else? And they start bartering. I feel like
Did you hear
an
what we
ear,
told you the last time? I can't. That's the problem.
I just feel like an ear is just a cosmetic thing, but fingers are useful. All of them.
So is an ear.
And it's mostly cosmetic. I can still hear without my ear.
I feel like if you're having conversation with someone who's gonna like stare at you the whole time because you're missing an
I
ear,
can wear a hat or grow my hair weird.
Oh, just like gawking at you.
That's
like
true.
And plus, if I'm so poor that I had to if I had to risk punishment twice, I'm sure there's a lot nastier things happening on my body than an ear being gone. Right? Like, there's probably
fair
some
enough.
fucked up teeth and...
would it increase your chance of getting money? Like a sympathy bag?
No, because if you
allowed
give
to.
money and they're not...
Ah.
they have to go to their parish.
Jeez.
And then you're just one-eared Simpson.
Sounds like so much work to be poor.
All right, well, don't worry. It gets worse. All right. So then the monasteries were dissolved, as I mentioned earlier, and the monks and the priests were paid, but the servants got nothing. So they needed to beg, and then that's on top of all of the people who relied on the monasteries who were now begging. So Henry VIII is just wonderful. So then our gossip girl of England, Chapuis, he said that there were 20,000 more vagabonds and beggars in England because of the close of the monasteries. He also hated Henry VIII. And he was probably exaggerating. But there was clearly a marked uptick. So in the response to those growing numbers, Henry VIII invested in social programs to support the poor. He provided housing and education, and he created a lot of jobs. It was cool. I'm just kidding. He made it all worse. All right. In 1536, sometime between mourning his ex-wife, beheading his other ex-wife, mourning his illegitimate son, marrying his third wife, and suppressing a rebellion, Henry passed another act.
Where did he find the time?
He's just a strong lady trying to have it all. All right, so mayors had to, in this act, mayors had to...
He just has that weird, like, he's like one of those, like, weird people, the schedule is just, like, almost every hour is scheduled of his day, like, almost every...
I hear the Dolly Parton song playing in my head, but, like, with Henry VIII with, like, tumble out of bed and stumble into the kitchen. All right, so this act, mayors had to make sure all the vagabonds who were previously whipped were constantly working. They did monthly house-to-house searches in order to find vagabonds. This is awful. Any child over 5 found begging was assigned employment with a master until they were 16. Children over 12 who refused to work were whipped. If the constable refused to whip them, the constable was put in the stocks for 2 days and given bread and water only.
I was just kind of curious. They all make little child-sized stocks.
The kid's like,
It's like a little Tykes-looking one. It's like colored.
I bet you that we got to find that one artist who does those little tykes. Okay. The second time they were found wandering, they were whipped and part of an ear was cut off. And the third time, they were just straight up hanged.
Jeez.
Let's see. And these laws were enforced. A historian in 1578 recorded that 72,000 vagabonds and thieves were hanged in Henry VIII's reign.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Majority of these were for theft, not for a third offense.
Huh.
So, just so you know, at that time, England's population was 3 million. 72,000 people represents 2.5% of the population. So, hold the phone. That's almost high as a percentage of population as victims of Hitler and Stalin. Yeah.
I'm speechless.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I know. Okay, in the last year of Henry VIII's reign, assaults on the members of the public, maiming farm animals, I thought that said mourning farm animals, maiming farm animals and other acts of destruction increased, obviously in fury. They were not attributed to vagabonds, but to husbandmen with grudges. Remember, husbandmen, the farmers. So they burnt timber. They cut it, which was a huge, big, bad problem. Like, do not burn timber. England does not have a lot of wood, and when
fascinating.
You needed a lot of that to build warships, which was a big thing for Henry VIII.
Yeah.
And then, so burning timber was like a huge profit loss.
Well, now I'm trying to think about what would like a castle be burning?
So, okay. Again, At Home talks about this. So the reason you saw so many different styles of houses based off of, like, you see certain time periods where they're like, this house is made of stone and this one's made of timber and this one's made of brick. Mm-hmm. It's because of what was available at the time.
That's
right.
That's
and like
so
technology plays a part. Like, bricks weren't around for as long as people would think, and they had to be made in very specific ways, and they wouldn't always set because of the high heat required. The inside of it might not be baked all the way, so then half the bricks made are useless. So like, Hampton Court is even more impressive when you think about that.
Yeah, it is a really crazy thing about building homes, especially depending on back then where, you know, there's no such thing as like real imports for that kind of like building materials. You're depending on what's around you.
And then it also look at the survival of those kind of materials. So the oldest door in England, and this is such a weird thing for me to know. There's a door in England, a single door, and it's from the 1100s. And it is, but like, grand scheme of thing, that's not that old, right? But the next oldest is, it's not like 1200, you know? Like, wood just wasn't going to last long. So when these husbandmen were burning timber, they were fucking shit up. So it's the equivalent of the other things they did. They cut ears off people. They cut tongues off farm animals. They burnt carts. If you were convicted of burning timber, you were sentenced to death. Now, if you were convicted of cutting off an ear, that was a 10-pound fine. 10 pounds is still a lot, but you weren't killed for it.
Huh.
Yeah.
For just burning some wood.
Burning some wood. But it was so valuable. That was like the only way they could do so much.
That is fascinating thing about wood being like a really valuable material.
Really, just listeners, please go get the At Home book. It's so fascinating.
For us in the U.S., like, we were so much wood.
That's why. That's why America became so profitable, is because we've got woods fucking everywhere, right? Like the amount of wood, the amount of wood we were able to export was astounding, right? And then you got like England, this tiny little island.
Yeah, island and a lot of very just open areas,
right?
Plains.
Oh, do you want to hear something kind of sad from a historical perspective?
I know that we've got a shit ton of wood here, but I never thought of us as like exporting wood. So
I don't know if we're still doing it, to be fair. I don't know if it's still.
No, our biggest export is movies now.
Right. Here's something really interesting. Have you guys heard of Chippendale's furniture? Not the strippers, but the furniture.
Then
Chipmunks.
No.
Yeah.
Not those Chippendale. All right.
Rescue Rangers.
Chippendale desks. All right. You know what? Chippendale's irrelevant. Back in Victorian times, there were a lot of high quality pieces of furniture that were created by very few people. So like if you find out you have an authentic Chippendale, you're about to be loaded. It didn't exist for long, and the tools used to make that finely crafted furniture had just come about. So that's why there was that period where like furniture went from like two pieces of wood stuck together to elaborate, beautifully carved pieces. So in that time period, not Chippendale, but another furniture creator, they found a very beautiful type of mahogany that grew in a very specific part of the world, and they used it so extensively that it's extinct now. So there are, and it's not a lot of pieces of furniture that are still around made out of this type of wood, but like the demand for it was so through the roof, and they just went ahead and made as much as they could, and they never replanted it or anything. So that's your wood lesson for today. Seriously, guys.
This has been Wood Facts with Emily. Tune in next week for more Wood Facts.
I'm going to come back with Wood Facts every week for the rest of my life.
Would you would?
Fucking do it, Emily. You won't.
I won't. I give up on things. But I'll do it for a little while, and it'll be funny for like 3 episodes. All right. Then Henry VIII died, and everybody was happy.
Yay!
Henry VI had an idea that if a vagabond couldn't find a job, they had to offer to be a servant. If nobody wanted a servant, then they'd say, all right, well, how about you just feed them and give them a drink, and like then they'll work for you, and that's all you got to do. So slavery. If they didn't, they would go to JP. I even wrote a question mark next to that. Something Purdue. What do you guys think JP stands for? They would go to JP and say, hey, make him my slave for 2 years.
JP Whitworth.
Hey, somebody in England, what does a JP stand for? Thank you.
Jackson Pollock.
They went to Jackson Pollock, and they said, make this guy... Okay, so if a vagabond said...
Justice of the peace.
Thank you. Stupid Garrett with his stupid Google. All right. They would go to the Justice of the Peace, and they would say, hey, make this poor person my slave for 2 years. Okay? So, just so you know, I'm poor. Walking down the street.
Shortest distance.
Lost my... getting the shortest distance back to my parish. Just trying to get there as quick as possible. My back is in tatters. I'm missing an ear. And somebody sees me, and they're like, you, work for me. I'm like, I was going to go home. They're like, I'll give you food. No, my mom lives there, and I really want to go see her. All right, Justice of the Peace, make her my slave. Justice of the Peace would go, okay. So...
You got it.
The servant was branded with the letter V for vagabond. And their owners could beat and chain them. If a slave ran away in those 2 years, they would become slaves for life. And let's get back to the children, because don't forget, they were also poor. Any beggars or vagabonds who had children over 5, those children were taken away and given to masters. The males...
Children 5 and under eat for free.
The males stayed with masters until they were 24, and the females until they were 20. And if they ran away, if those children ran away, they would also become slaves. If slaves attacked or planned to attack their masters, they were hanged. So Eddie the Sixth, he just really had a solid plan to deal with the poor.
I'm sure that little child knew exactly what to do.
He was a monster. That was repealed after 3 years. So it was probably meant more as a deterrent. It wasn't carried out, but it was read at markets twice a year. So it was more like a threat, like, hey, don't forget, if you're poor, I'm gonna make you our slaves.
Don't you even think about being poor.
Don't you fucking think about
just do it. I just dare you to do it. Be poor.
I want you to do it.
I want you to be poor.
It's okay. So then there was they replaced it with the same act from 1530, the one about whipping and losing your ears, but there was no more death, no more slavery. All right. So then in 1550, there was an act that set up a workhouse. Do not ever go into a workhouse. FYI. If you find time travel, if you slip into a vortex and you go into history and you're poor and you don't know where you are, and they're like, there's a workhouse for people like you, don't go. Okay, guys, just don't do it.
How bad were the workhouses?
You're really bad. So they weren't that bad in this time period, but in Victorian times, just don't do it. Basically,
Victorian times?
Don't
Fuck
go back
that.
to the Victorian times ever. There's literally a period of time in Victorian England called the Great Stink. And it's because there was so much sewage and offal and garbage and human everything in the Thames River that the entire fucking city stank.
The Great Stink was my nickname back in high school.
All right, so the Act of 1550 set up workhouses. These workhouses weren't as bad. It set them up in every parish, and it was for aged and impotent poor. So they would be sheltered and cared for. They were also given work that they were capable of doing. They just didn't get paid. So, like, if you were blind, you weren't going to be told you had to go read to the destitute, which would kind of be funny. But you were given work you could do. And citizens were then required to give alms to support the workhouses. It was pressure. Catholics are really good at that, so it's not that big of a deal. But it was more like everybody expects you to give alms, and you're gonna get the stink eye if you don't. When Mary became the queen, not much changed. Even though she was Catholic, she couldn't restore the monastic lands because it would have been taking away land from too many powerful men who benefited from it. But alms did become more compulsory. So if someone didn't give alms, that Catholic guilt thing, they were just guilted by all the Catholics. And then if they still didn't get alms, somebody would write to the bishop, which is like, look, for the non-Catholics, that's like going to your mom. But your mom is really strict and mean.
Can you remind me, as a non-Catholic religious person, what an alm is?
Money.
Okay.
Money.
Yeah.
So every week.
It sounds funny to me every time I hear alm.
Alms or tithes?
Tithes, yeah. Yep, same thing. So every week at church, if you still go to church, they do a part, usually 2, where they'll pass around a basket and you put your donations in there. Those are alms.
Way to be fancy about it.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be 10% of your income? Is that it?
Something like that.
Yeah, insane.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane.
All right, so in Elizabeth's time, that all changed. The punishments changed to... All right, if you were a vagabond, you were grievously whipped and you were burned through the gristle of the right ear with a hot iron.
What is their obsession with the ears?
And I know.
The fucking ear, man.
An inch wide.
God.
Yeah. Like making gauges. However, the vagabond could escape that if there was a landowner who agreed to take in a vagabond into their service. Now, if a vagabond left that service or was convicted a second time, they would be hanged unless somebody agreed to employ them. A third time, they were just straight up hanged. And in Elizabeth's reign, 800 thieves were hanged per year. And then in 1576, they began a practice of giving work to the aged and impotent poor to perform in their own home. So this was actually kind of interesting. The mayor would keep wool, hemp, flax, stuff like that. And when a poor person came, they would give them those materials and have them turn it into relevant items so that they were at least being productive. The poor would have orders that they'd have to produce items for. That actually lasted for 250 years. Now, if they were doing that and they went begging anyway, guess what happened?
You lost an ear.
Not lost, just burned. But also whipped and then hanged a third time if they did it 3 times.
So say hanged a third time. Like, oh, the first hangings didn't quite take. So.
Sorry. The third time they did it, they were hanged. Then in 1576, the punishment was imposed to parishioners who refused to give to poor houses. So they had to pay twice the rate of whatever, I don't know, the going rate of giving alms were. So we all know that anybody who was a soldier and then comes home is basically fucked. And that same thing happened after the Armada. So in 1593, a bunch of discharged and wounded soldiers, they actually were cared for. They could apply to county treasurers for a weekly sum. And then in 1597, the death sentence for vagabonds was finally abolished for goods. And then parishioners who refused to give alms could be imprisoned. And that is the end of everything I know about the Tudors and how much they loved giving back to those in need.
They loved it.
Yeah.
Well, that was also sweet of them.
You know, as horrifying and awful as all that stuff is as to what they would do to poor people, to those in need, I feel like America isn't that far off. Like, if it wasn't frowned upon to, just beat the shit out of people and hang people for being poor, we would probably be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing, though. At least we have private organizations that support those in need. Like, when you talk about, like, government support of it, we still have we have something, and maybe it's not the best, but there are also more, I think, more private individuals are going to help than I think would have then, because I think generally the public they don't see being poor as like deserving like they did back then. Like, you were born to be poor, man. I'm sorry. Like, it's just, it sucks for you, but you can't try and be better.
The way you heard about it, the way you always talked about people back then, your stature was like truly just like set in stone kind of thing.
Well, that's why Anne Boleyn becoming Queen of England was such a shock. Like, she had no right. She was a commoner. And the idea of a commoner marrying the King of England was just completely astounding. So, yeah, your status was set. And you could, like, eke your way up. Like, Anne Boleyn's family, having married into the Howard family, which is what happened with Anne Boleyn's father, Thomas, married Elizabeth Howard, who was the sister of the Duke of Norfolk. That was a big move, and it only came about because, like, 2 generations before, her father had been the mayor of London. So becoming a powerful player was definitely a long game, and you had to have some insight into politics to make it happen. But, like, a farmer from Sussex was not going to make that happen. I just pulled the name Sussex out of my ass. I don't know if that's a thing that they do there. Sorry.
So if you're poor, just be hot enough to marry.
No, that wasn't even going to do enough for you.
Especially if you're missing an ear.
No.
That was the Vagabonds.
Well, I feel better now.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, isn't it? Like, you don't think about those kind of things.
It's interesting how much just throughout history we just fucking hate poor people.
One thing I wish that there was some sort of way to get information was how the average English subject would have experienced the reign of Henry VIII. Like, somebody who was born the same year as Henry and died the same year as Henry. I want to know what their experience would have been like if they weren't at the court, if they weren't maybe in London. I want to know, like, I know broadly how their lives would have changed, but I want to know what they would have thought of it. Like, was it even something that somebody would have considered? Like, oh, Henry's on his 5th wife, whatever. Like, it's just, was it an uneducated thing of like, well, whatever God says happens? Or were people more educated at that point enough to say, number 5? But there's not any of that information. So when I do find out information about, like, the average life, even if, being that poor wasn't necessarily crazy, like a very average experience, it's still interesting to hear about.
I don't know why, but now I just got the idea in my head to make, like, a children's book based on, like, what it'd be like for a kid living in Henry's time. We call it A Kid in King Henry's Court.
I'd read it. I would absolutely read that book.
You know what? Let's just make it. Why not?
Okay, let's do it. I can write. You can.
All right.
You can draw.
No, no way I cannot. I cannot draw, Emily. All right, let's end this episode so we can go ahead and reminisce.
Okay. I don't know what Jeff's doing over there.
Oh, I was trying to find a joke.
Well, it's been too long now.
I'm sorry, I suck.
You've ruined the show. Now we have to...
I'm sorry, but you threw off the show's groove.
Sorry. Okay, listeners, those 4 topics I suggested, let me know. Post on our Facebook or whatever. Also, finger or ear, which would you rather have lopped off? I vote ear.
I'm okay with, like, losing a pinky.
What if you don't get to choose?
I'll take
What
a
if you
pinky.
don't get to choose which finger?
Oh.
Oh, no. Never mind.
All right. Pinky or ear to make it easier. or other.
Okay,
Pinky, ear, or other. I go ear. I
found my joke.
What's your joke?
It was from Gallivant.
Oh, I love
That's all I
Gallivant.
could think about. It was King Richard trying to tell a joke. 3 serfs walk into a bar. The first serf orders a hot grog. The second serf orders a hot grog. The third serf orders a hot grog. But he has no money, or neither do the other two, because they're serfs. That's all I could think about when you kept saying serfs.
Show recommendation, listeners. Please go watch Gallivant. It's delightful.
Only 18 episodes. It's silly.
It is art. It is pure art.
Like, I remember I was talking about it, like, when the show was first, like, the podcast was, we were first doing the podcast. We were talking about it then.
So funny. Okay.
And people are excited about it.
All right, serfs, go forth and beg.
Beg forth. All right. Yeah.
That's it. Facebook, Twitter,
Instagram now.
Yeah.
I think
Tiki-taki.
I think I upload stuff on YouTube too, but I mean, YouTube's just the episodes.
Why do we have an IMDb page?
Why do we?
Yes.
What?
We do?
Yes.
When?
I googled
Bullshit.
Tudor. I hardly know her,
I know
and there's an IMDb page.
I know some podcasts sometimes do have IMDb stuff.
Apparently, we have an IMDb page,
I'll
so
have to find that.
we are 100% going to add our own trivia to our IMDb page. So I guess IMDb us.
Because I've had an IMDb
Credit.
profile
Yeah.
credits.
Well,
for
now
many
you can
years
add
now.
Tudor. I hardly know her.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'll have to go find that. That's
Sick.
funny.
All right, listeners.
That's awesome.
Fucking famous now.
Yeah, now I'm curious. Like, did someone create that for us, or did someone? Because that's the thing is,
I
someone
actually
had to
wonder
make
if it has something to do with YouTube.
Like it,
Like auto
scraped it.
scraped it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
scraped it from some profile thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Somebody
Fascinating.
whichever one of our listeners works at IMDb, tell us how that works.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's one of you out there. Okay. I think that's it, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we'll try and make this a little more
Don't
regular.
make promises we can't keep.
We say that, and then 3 months later we'll have.
We're not
going
to promise
Yeah.
anything, but
We'll see in 3 months.
I want to make it more regular because I like talking to you
I also
guys.
love it. We just, life. But
Yeah, live.
happy to
but
be back in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get what you pay for, which
Yeah,
is free.
bitches. All right.
Don't call them
No,
bitches.
that was to you.
Oh.
I love you.
Divorced,
Died.
beheaded, died.
Divorced,
beheaded,
beheaded,
survived.
survived.
Beheaded, survived.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Woo!
To the stock with you.
And scene.